What's up, everybody, and welcome to The Horror Within Me, a podcast dedicated to the world of horror. I am your host, Eric, and each week I'm going to rate and review a new movie or TV show that falls within the horror genre. Now, this is a show for horror fans, hosted by a horror fan, who's just here to share my opinions and experiences with my fellow horror friends in hopes that you may gain something new to watch or not watch, and really just talk about all things related to this beautifully dark and spooky world that we call horror. So if this sounds like a show for you, stick around, we're going to have a lot of fun. So let's get started. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Spooky Sunday episode of The Horror Within Me. This week's episode is going to be an interview episode, and I am joined by my very special guest, Jay Crimson, who is an independent horror filmmaker, podcast host, and band member of No Class Assassins. Welcome, Jay.
Hey, how are you, dude?
Good, man. I am really excited about this episode. You are my first of three. First podcast host, first filmmaker, and first band person that I've ever interviewed on this show. So it's like a triple threat right now. Right. I'm excited to dive in.
Hell yeah. Let's do it.
So just for the people that are listening or watching, so give us an introduction. Who is Jay Crimson? Background.
Jay Crimson is someone who got into horror and heavy music, metal and punk at a young age, and knew I wanted to do something and be involved with it for the rest of my life. First watching Halloween, and when I was a little kid, 1978 Halloween, John Carpenter, man, him blew me away. He knew that if I could feel that way about what he's showing me, that I could be a part of that potentially. I wanted people to feel that way too, how he made me feel. So that's what got me into horror. Metal, it was definitely an anti-parents, anti-adults thing when I was growing up. I'm like, oh, you don't like this? Oh, okay. Me and my mom never got along too well, so there was that. My dad was the more level-headed, and I think I got a lot of my mom up here in this crazy brain, so I thank her, and I don't at the same time, but I wouldn't be me without her, so there's that. Not a lot of encouragement as a kid being into horror and metal. It was like you're pouring your life down the drain to them. And I don't know, I just kept pushing forward, and I wrote music with No Class Assassins. I'm writing music now with my punk band Chemical Valley Mutants. We're probably going to play our first show this year. And I've just always wanted to push forward, record as much music, make as many movies as I can. Money and time are against me, so I'm all about pushing forward and getting as much done as I can.
I really appreciate the backstory, because I think one of the things that I always say when I interview people is that we all have this unique connection where we all come from different backgrounds, but what we have in common is like the horror theme of everything. And like your story of John Carpenter's Halloween is similar to my story of John Carpenter's Halloween. If you can't tell behind me what my favorite franchise is, I have my hat, Michael, I have Michael everywhere. It is different. I grew up differently too. I had a good relationship, love-hate relationship. My parents didn't get along, so it was a very toxic environment. So my escape was the horror realm as well. I was never really that big into the heavy metal, except when I went through my heavy metal phase when I was 12. I went through the Rob Zombie Living Dead Girl album phase. So
okay,
I was that kid. But it does, horror and metal go very hand in hand. Maybe you can just tell me why you think that is more, as someone who's not that involved in metal.
Oh, like why they are so hand in hand?
Yeah.
Just it's for outcasts, you know what I mean? I feel like a lot of black sheep of the family get into horror and metal and punk and stuff like that because it was taboo. It was something that most people of the population don't comprehend. They can't understand it. But there's a lot of peace in the family vibe with horror and metal and punk and stuff like So it all boils down to what you do to tune out of the world for a little bit. It's all how you perceive it.
I agree. My nephew who's 23, he's a big horror fan too, and also into metal and always has been. And like I said, coming from like where we come from, like my family, there wasn't any other metal people, so it's just in him. It's not like anything that he was introduced to. It's something that he discovered on his own. So I think that's a very good point. And just speaking of like the identities of what we create for ourselves, Jake Crimson is your name. Is Crimson significant? Is that something you came up with on your own, or?
Why I tied that into my alter ego. Ooh, I was just going to say ego, and it probably would have been right. Crimson comes from my love of the Misfits, the original Misfits, and the Crimson Ghost, which is their logo, which is right there.
Oh, nice.
That's called the Crimson Ghost, and Danzig from the Misfits back in the 70s, he used it from a horror movie, but they always called it the Crimson Ghost, and that's kind of where I came up with it. I used to be in an independent deathmatch wrestling league, and when you get a crimson mask is when you're bleeding. So
Okay.
it just seemed to fit me, Misfits, horror, hardcore wrestling, blood. So yeah, I'm Jay Crimson now.
I mean, it really is nice to have things like that you can latch onto and make an identity. Like the name for my show, The Horror Within Me, I came up with because of my love for horror movies, but also the horrors of what I've gone through in my life.
Right.
So that's why it's what it is. Because I always think that there's so much more. And like you made a good point with being outcast as a metal and horror fan growing up. I'm not sure how old you are. I'm 36.
39.
So yeah, we're in the same generation.
Mm-hmm.
Back in our youth, it was not as mainstream today with horror. Like horror was always around, but it was never as serious. Even the people that made horror movies, big budget horror movies, weren't taken seriously if they only acted in horror.
Right.
So
Horror
there,
was kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the bunch.
yeah, and I think it's gotten better, but there's still this whole community of people for like even like with your films. Your film, I watched The Witch and I watched Green Hell today because I was wanted to be fresh, and I really liked the VHS aspect. Like it just stuck out to me a lot on the Green Hell part, um, with the flickering of the tape when it would go away. Just instant nostalgia for me. And with your short film, The Witch, I don't know if this was something you intended, but what I really appreciated was the lack of sound. It really made me look back and think of like silent film era.
Yep, that's kind of what I was hoping for. That people would get a retro sense out of it all. Um, yeah, I'm very inspired by the '80s VHS aesthetic and stuff like that. I love stuff like that. I'll probably mention that on every podcast I'll ever be on. Broken
You
tapes,
need to.
right? The whole, yeah, like you said, the flickering of the tape and stuff like that, the color lines, the bar lines, the pause tracking, stuff like that. I love stuff like that, and it's because
Yeah,
of being an '80s baby. And The Witch, definitely influenced by old school silent black and white stuff, kind of like you ever see Haxan, Witchcraft Through the Ages?
I have not. So I haven't seen many of the old like black and white horrors. I know I always say I'm a bad fan to certain things, but we like what we like. But I just got vibes of like Nosferatu and things like that.
Right.
Just like the scenes, like I was
Cool.
just waiting for like I was waiting for like a text to pop up with like something. But I liked now. Here's my interpretation. Maybe you can tell me. Like everyone might interpret it wrong for this. The witch. It looked like your character was searching for her. She looked like she was hiding from him. But then at the end, she was the witch who ended up killing him. Was like, is that spot on?
Right. I wanted people to get the wrong idea right away. I wanted people to think she was running from someone, and she was, but I
Hmm.
never really explained why. And it just, at the end, she gets in someone else's car, and it just starts again in this loop of witchy
Yeah.
behavior. Yeah.
Yeah, it gave Blair Witch too. I liked it. It did. I was
Thank you,
getting
dude.
the vibe from like 1990. So yeah, and I really liked the. So I dig deep into like my psyche of things, and I find what I connect to, and like the Green Hell film, I thought it was the undertones of like the big emphasis on drug addicts was a lot of like it was like a cautionary tale almost
Yeah.
on on the world, and that was made what in you said 2006.
The Witch or Green Hell?
Green Hell.
Green Hell I filmed in 2006 into '07 and '08.
Yeah, so the themes with that even more ahead of its time because even more so now there's that whole crisis with the things being laced and taking these drugs that are like the fentanyl killing people, and like you had this whole film made where people were seeing things that weren't there after they were taking this green liquid that they were drinking, and it was just like such a psych out film. It was really good actually. I enjoyed it.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. And you have good comments. This is like I said, my podcast is like a horror review. I call it a horror review podcast and interviews. So I like people were. I was reading the comments on your YouTube page, and people loved it, and that's good. So you should like feel really proud of like the hard. I'm sure it's not easy work to be able to do. Even that it was like 50 minutes. Probably took you how long to make that movie? You said a couple years.
Yeah. uh, Money, time. We're just a bunch of punk kids making a movie. I No one got paid. We just, it was a labor of love. It was just a group of friends killing some time and wanting to make something cool. I always wanted to make a movie. I was more uh, involved in music, strictly music and stuff, but I found an opportunity to branch out a bit, and I took it.
I think that's great, and you are sounding like the John Carpenter interviews from the original Halloween when they talk about the original Halloween, just a group of kids just trying to make a movie with a very low budget. I had an interview. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Night of the Demons.
Yes.
I interviewed Amelia Kincaid back in October, and she said the same thing. It was just a bunch of teenagers just trying to make a movie. We were just having fun. Nobody thought it was going to take anything seriously, and like I think that's where you really make like horror. You guys, because you're fans too. You're not just out here just trying to make these big budget productions. You're making art in your art form and your content, and it shows when you do it that way.
Right. Sometimes you're forced, well, with any independent, low budget film, you're forced to be creative and try this angle or have the actor move this way or, anything to, you either want some symmetry on screen or counter symmetry. And with editing, it's a fun, interesting process. Real tedious, but
Yeah.
pays off.
So, do you edit your movies yourself, or do you have a team like that helps you?
I edit my shorter ones, but my longer ones, Justin Squires from Dark Forest Media helps me, and
Okay.
he filmed the music video for Depression by No Class Assassins, which is on Troma now, and he helped me edit Green Hell, and he is currently working with me on my newest movie, Lilith.
So that's a perfect segue because I wanted to just jump in on your next project is named Lilith. What can you tell us about Lilith?
It's going to be hard to watch for some people. It's definitely going to be shocking. I kind of do a editing technique where we are forcing you to watch something you might not want to watch, if that makes sense, from one frame to the next. Uh, this movie is about a junkie prostitute who decides to perform a ritual to summon help out of her horrible existence. And we'll just say that she tries her hand at witchcraft and she becomes influenced by something, and terror
Okay.
ensues. It's
Interesting, because
sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. I'm sorry. No, it's fine. I was listening.
It's gonna be a shocking movie. I have paid some independent artists to make claymation, animation, and different kind of puppet stuff in this movie too. So it's kind of a hybrid. It's live action, but it's also a bunch of different medias too. And I kind of wanted that. I wanted it to be a inner city version, ghetto version of Alice in Wonderland with psychedelic visuals and yeah, it's kind of influenced by Spun. You ever see the movie Spun?
No,
Or
but I'm gonna
Jonas?
have to look that up now.
Right, Jonas Ackerland. He makes a lot of music videos. That's what he's known for. But he did
Okay.
Lords of Chaos and he did Spun, and just really in depth, intense director. And I wanted to replicate that. But there's a lot of trippy and psychedelic visuals along with this film's disturbing uh, visuals. There's a lot of crazy stuff in this.
Do you have a release yet, or?
Ooh, we're not even sure right now if it's going to be a full length or if it's going to be a short. We're just going to take the footage we got, work on it. I still have about three pickup shots to film, like cutaways and stuff. That won't take too long. We're planning it up. I've had some car issues, so
Yeah.
funds have kind of pushed me back a few steps, but it'll be done this year for sure. And I think I got Troma on board. Talked to Lloyd Kaufman yesterday and his agent, and I'm not sure yet, but I'm hoping this is going to be a full-fledged Troma film, and I'm hoping that it gets put out on Troma Now. I'm sure it will. My other three films and two music videos are on there. Uh, yeah, we're just taking it day by day, keeping in touch and seeing what we can do.
That's really awesome too. Like I hadn't heard of Trauma. I just had heard of it from you, and I've looked it up, and I think that's such a cool platform. I think it's so awesome to have platforms for independent people that are just trying to do things. Like for me, for like my podcast, I am I guess independent. I don't have a team. It's just me, and I get the editing is tedious. I get funding for certain things is rough. Time management is definitely very hard when you are doing this because it's your passion, as opposed to like you're getting paid full time. So you have to, allocate your time appropriately. It is definitely a different realm for independent content creators.
Right, for sure. And it's always a good day when two out of the three actors you plan show up. Then you can actually do stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So are all of your actors, do you put like an ad out, or are they all like strictly like within your circle?
Oh yeah. Um, I I just stick to my circle for now until more funds come on the way. Then I would like to branch out a bit. But I think that's how you come up with the best stuff too, is just sticking within your circle or reaching out on like social media to see if any of your friends are interested in acting, making some art. So yeah, I pretty
Yeah.
much do that.
I think that's pretty awesome too. And they seem to be obviously on board. So are we looking for like, are we going to see like some of the same characters from the previous films? Not characters, but actors, I should say.
Quite possibly. I try to do things a little bit different and grab someone I haven't put on screen before. Um, we'll let some other people shine. But yeah, there'll be some repeated actors in there doing their thing.
I like that when with filmmakers like like American Horror Stories or the Hill House people, and I cannot for the life of me think of either one of their names right now. It's just escaping me. They're, but they use the same actors all the time,
Right.
and I always love when it almost becomes like a family under that umbrella. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's pretty nice to have that connection. I think, like you said, as a fan of horror, a lot of the times we go to horror because we have this disconnect with our already, blood family. So we create these other families like other communities do.
Right. Yep.
So what inspired your films? Like, do you have like a certain, is it your childhood? Like, was it a specific filmmaker, or like what sparks you and like, I want to make that into a movie?
Ooh, lots of things in the brain since
Yeah.
birth. Let's see. I'm influenced by so much. Like, I'm a very impressionable guy, so I see something and it intrigues me. I'm like, ooh, I'm on it already. I would say just my love of the old school stuff. I really love anything old school. Um, I'm not super interested in making HD, CGI, all this crazy stuff. I'm interested in going backwards instead of forwards and kind of paying tribute to all the classics. And I think that's something that's kind of big right now with Stranger Things and all these shows doing like 80s vibes and stuff. I think it's really cool. It just shows that people are artists are coming full circle.
I agree. And now we're starting to get into the 90s, which is just making me feel so old in my life because, we grew up in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
born in the 80s, but like our prime was like, childhood was 90s, early 2000s. So when I think of the 90s, early 2000s, so obviously I think of films like Scream, Wishmaster, the last couple Nightmare on Elm Streets, maybe the last one that was in there, like a couple Halloweens, but it was a very different vibe. Tales from the Crypt was in the 90s. Our childhood was also like very horror friendly. We had I don't know what it's like for kids today, but we had a lot of range of horror from like the Jasons and the Freddys, but even like childhood content like Are You Afraid of the Dark? There's so much stuff that we were exposed to.
Remember Erie, Indiana?
Oh God, yes, I didn't until you just said it, and it just went in my head.
Was that on Nickel?
Yeah, there was a Snick. Everything was Snick.
Oh yeah, with the little stickly guy.
Yeah, the exact. Yeah, it was a mess. But they were the shows that people like. Everything's coming back, and this isn't horror related. But there was, I think, Jimmy Fallon. I just saw a TikTok clip. They're doing Keenan and Kel are doing a Good Burger too.
Yep, I heard about that. Sweet.
So like you're on the right track because we want to see it. We want to see the old school vibes. We want to be a part of it, and then these films like yours, like Skinamarink,
Oh yeah.
are doing things that are very experimental. My issue with Skinamarink was it didn't have my attention.
Okay.
It just the shots were just there, and then it was just loud noises. Just like it just wasn't for me.
Right.
Whereas like I could follow a plot line for your story.
Oh right. Did you see Babadook?
One time, and I honestly I can't tell you much about it after that.
I see.
It's a storybook or something, right?
Yeah, it had some to do with the story. Yeah, storybook.
And the mom wasn't she just dealing with a lot of stuff, and the kid was like like something
Overbearing
on
child. Yeah.
yeah, like there was a lot. Like I've seen it, but it's not something I've watched more than one time.
Right on. I thought it was pretty damn good for an independent film.
I thought it was good, but for me, I'd have to see it again to just remember. It's been years,
Right. Give that one another watch.
absolutely. And I don't know the Babadook for some reason after it became famous, it like became like a gay icon for a little bit. I don't know. Somebody made a post, and then it was at Pride and everything. I was like, what's going on with the Babadook?
Right. That's good though.
But yeah, no, it's pretty good. Like I definitely want to revisit that. So is that like the route you're going, the independent? Like, do you want to introduce a monster in any of your movies?
Ooh. Yeah. Yes, I would. I definitely would. I'd like to have like something that's has some longevity to it, like like a Michael Myers or a Jason
Yeah,
Voorhees or something like that. I would love to make a Nightmare on Elm Street fan film or something.
somebody needs to do something with a Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yes.
it just I was not a fan of the remake. It in my book is the worst remake I've ever seen,
Agreed.
and it has nothing to do with Jackie playing Freddy at all.
Oh,
It
true.
is literally just the style of the way the movie was shot, the theme, like it just wasn't right, and we didn't need to make him a pedophile to make him. You know what I mean? Like he was already a child killer. We could have left his story that way.
Yep.
They tried something, and it just wasn't right for me. I didn't like the way that it was very slow motion. It reminded me. It just wasn't for me. My favorite horror movie remake was the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 2003.
Oh yeah, with Beale, Jessica Biel.
Yeah,
Yeah, good movie. Um, you know what remake I hated? The Poltergeist.
yeah, I watched it once. It was, it wasn't great.
No, when you have
There,
an original that's so good, just I don't know. Try harder.
it's hard to, it's very hard to make these movies that are so, you know, sentimental to fans. Like I look at like the Halloween franchise, and Halloween Ends is a very controversial topic, but I liked Halloween Ends, but I didn't like Halloween Ends as the final part of the trilogy. I thought it was fresh. I thought it was a new concept,
Me too.
but I didn't like that that was after the first two. And I didn't like the comment that the David Gordon Green made. I just read it recently again too, that the plan was never to make a Michael and Laurie film, but your marketing set us up for that kind of film, and that's not what it was. So what was that? Why would you do that to people? You have to have some sort of fan concept in your
I
mind
feel
for
that.
that
I
franchise.
feel that. Yeah. I thought, well, if someone wants to watch Michael Myers ninja kill a bunch of people, just watch Halloween Kills.
Yeah,
For a more in-depth movie, watch Halloween Ends. I thought that movie was awesome, but the first time I watched it, I was like, oh no. But the second time I
I
watched it, I'm like, wait a minute. And the third time I watched it, I was like, I'm sold. I love this movie because they took chances. Jamie Lee Curtis already said longtime fans are going to hate it. But the open minded horror movie fan should have loved it, in my opinion,
yes,
because
I
they did something
yeah
different. What was his name? Corey Cunningham.
yeah.
Two C's, Michael Myers, two M's. Did you catch that?
I did not. Damn it.
Right, stuff like that, and they did little hints that what was the daughter's name? Allison.
Allison, yeah.
Yeah, like she's gonna be a killer. Did you pick up on that at all? Like they even
She
show
was.
the camera angle pans to the wall of her shadow, and then back to her. They did that for a
I thought
reason.
they were gonna do like a Bonnie and Clyde thing. I was like, oh god, is that where we're going?
Oh, I see. Yeah, with Corey and her. Yeah,
Yeah,
there were some things I thought was real bizarre, but I thought they executed what they did well. If you have to watch something more than once to grasp it, that's a good movie.
I agree. And I like I said, I liked the movie. I liked that it wasn't the same thing all the time. There's so many Halloweens. You can and there's different timelines. So if that's not your favorite, that's fine. You can go watch a Halloween H2O and that can be your final. Like there are different ways to watch the Halloween franchise. So I really appreciated that they gave us something completely different. I think the way that it was set up was poor. I just
Right, like the marketing behind it. I feel like,
um,
and they even did it. It stood on its own, just like Halloween
yes.
3, and
Yeah.
they had blue title screen, just like Halloween 3,
Yeah.
and they
Which I just rewatched again, and I was like, oh, okay, this is so bizarre, but it's also pretty good.
yeah, and they even had the masks from Halloween 3 and Halloween Kills and Ends. I think.
Yeah, I think it was all three films they had it in there, so we should have paid attention that that's where he was going.
Yep.
But yeah, so things like that I think are really cool. So, what would be some advice that you would give to other independent filmmakers who are trying to get to where you're at, or just trying to make a film, their first film? What would you say for the people that feel like, oh my god, I have no money or equipment? What can I do?
Well, here's a fun fact. I don't have much equipment either. Lilith is filmed on an Android phone in HD. So, and I was very surprised that Justin from Dark Force Media has been able to do some of the crazy shit he's done with Lilith so far. It's really gonna be a step up in the independent scene, and that's not me just. But
Or you should boost yourself.
blow my own horn.
Absolutely.
I try to be humble and stuff like that, but this movie is exciting, and it's going to be different. It's going to be a hard watch, but it's going to be different, and I think people are going to come out of it enriched a little bit. Maybe their eyeballs will need to take a break, but take risks. That's what I say. Take risks. Try something different. Try something new. Don't give up on it right away. Keep pursuing things, and try to see what people don't do when you're watching something.
I think that's really good advice, and I think you said like you hit the nail on the head when you said like you shot it on an Android phone. I think sometimes people get so deep in their thoughts and that they spiral, because I do this too, where you think you need to have all this certain things, and like we don't have to have all of that in today's world anymore. Like you said, you could shoot something on a phone. There's a lot of really cheap editing software. There's a lot of things that you can do to get creative, and
Especially
there's a lot
now.
more technology. Yeah, there's so much technology that, and there's even more. There's a lot of people out there that want to just be a part of something as a fan of horror or whatever you're making, that you don't have to pay them much or anything at all. If you have a group of friends that share it, like there are a lot of ways to get yourself out there, and you are proof of that.
Right. And we filmed Green Hell on a Sony Handycam. It was the first high 8 tape camera that folded out this way, and you can watch on a screen what you're
Yeah,
filming. It was the first of
I
its
had one
kind.
of those.
It was the first of its kind, really. You can hear the tape rolling in some scenes of Green Hell. You can hear it go.
Hmm.
I'm like, nah, just leave it in. That's cool. Um, that shooting on phone, it's wild. You can do crazy stuff now.
Now, were there any bloopers for your films?
Yeah, I have them up on Facebook. If you go to facebook.com/Crimson Videos, I have a bunch on there.
Nice, very nice. So Crimson Videos is your brand?
Yep.
Okay, that's really cool. And then, so that's your YouTube channel, your Facebook. Do you have you have Instagram?
Yeah. My links. You want me to run through my links? I got a couple written down.
Oh yeah, you're definitely, yeah. We gotta tell everybody how they find you.
Right. I do have a link tree, and everything's on there. Um, but facebook.com/NoClassJ, and that's my personal page. Facebook.com/Crimson Videos. Facebook.com/Chemical Valley Mutants, and that's my new hardcore punk band. Facebook.com/No Class Assassins, and that's my hardcore metal band. Facebook.com/Watch for Lilith for all of the Lilith updates. YouTube.com/KillYourBoss69, and that's Crimson Videos. Instagram @JCrimson83, and my TikTok @J_Crimson_videos.
I'm definitely gonna have to follow you on TikTok too. I like the I like TikTok. Do you like TikTok?
I do. There are
It's different than
there are some things
what we
that
started with.
I don't care for, but for me, I just try to use social media to push my art.
That's the thing, because social media is a blessing and a curse. It's great, but it can also be very overwhelming or very cruel and lonely.
Yes, it can.
So I think a message to those listening is always be fucking kind.
And that's a good segue into what the Crimson Cult is all about. I started something to throw in there. Hashtag the Crimson Cult, and that is a subculture group that I started against rapists, pedophiles, and any other predators.
Oh, nice.
I wanted to
So
attach something positive to my work, and sometimes horror and metal isn't always looked at as the most positive. But I feel very strongly against those things. It's kind of wrecking America, and I think
yeah.
we should take a couple steps forward and push a positive agenda when it comes to a cult. Usually, cults aren't positive. This one is.
Exactly. I there's so many stereotypes on like you said, we've been looked at as outcasts and misfits or like devil worshippers,
Mm-hmm. I've
Satanists. There's
gotten
just so
I've
much
gotten devil with a lot.
weirdos, and it's nice to feel like as you know that you're a good person and that you're just this is your community of people. And when you find your community of people, which I have found more and more now, and I love to connect with people like you and meet people on social media. I went to a horror convention a week ago in my area, and it was just nice to be around a bunch of fucking crazy people that love horror in all different levels. Because even within our community, there are people that will bash the people within the community, and it's like I literally think you can be involved in any part of the horror genre. If you only like family friendly horror, that doesn't make you less of a horror fan.
True.
Like be the same thing with gamers. That's a whole separate thing. But people are like, oh, if you only play games on your phone, you're not a gamer. Like, stop bashing people trying to exclude people from things, and if somebody wants to be involved in a community because they feel like they are, let them in.
Right. It's showing tolerance.
Yeah, definitely. But Troma, uh, is it free to get on there to watch your stuff?
Troma is $4.99 a month. Your first month's free. And you go to watch.troma.com, and there's hundreds and hundreds of movies on there. There's cartoons on there. They did Toxic Crusaders. That's going to be a new video game coming out on Xbox and Switch and PS5. It's going to be really cool. It's from the old, I think it came out in the 80s. 80s or, yeah, it had to have been 80s or 90s cartoons.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, it did pretty well. Toxic
Do you play games?
Crusaders. I play games once in a while, yeah. I'm more of a retro gamer guy, so I got a Super Nintendo, and I like to play Sega and stuff like that. So old school stuff, and I love side scrollers like
Okay.
Final
Yeah.
Fight, Streets of Rage. Yeah.
Streets of Rage. Yes. I don't know if you can see my other shelf. It's like weird. It's like Nintendo shit. But I have like I have a Nintendo Switch and a PS5. And the Nintendo Switch has the old school controllers you can use now for their stuff. I have an NES, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, 64 controllers. So I can play the games now.
Yes.
So I play Streets of Rage 2, GoldenEye on 64. So yeah, I know this for the listeners. Like, what are they talking about? But yeah, I think it's cool. I like horror gaming too. I'm excited this week. The new Resident Evil 4 remakes coming out, so I'm into the Resident Evils. So
I love that game.
I have that pre-ordered. Yeah, I played that one a lot. The first remake on GameCube and then Resident Evil 4. I think I played more than any Resident Evil game.
Resident Evil 4 was creepy in the beginning, and when you start to do the puzzles in the little buildings with the evil monks and everything, and
yeah,
the noises they make.
Resident Evil 4 was really good, and I think after that it got lost until 7.
Right. I don't think I've played it. Oh, I've played 5. But I don't think
5 was good, but it was
not as good as 4.
No. But I could talk all day about Resident Evils and horror, basically, but I don't want to take up any more of your time, so I'm going to get ready to end this episode. But before we say bye to everyone, is there any last-minute things you want anyone to know about your projects, your bands? You also have a podcast.
Oh, yeah, the Crimson Cult podcast. I do have a podcast coming up later in April with Lloyd Kaufman from Troma, and I think it's going to start a whole new series for me because I've never done videos. I've always just done audio podcast. So I think I'm going to step it up and start putting more content like that on my YouTube.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, like I just record now I use Riverside, and I just have a video. I'm like, I just post it right to YouTube too, and some of my episodes are more viewed on YouTube than they are on my audio, and the other way around. So I just posted both.
Right. It seems pretty easy
You
to
never
use.
know.
Seems pretty easy. Riverside and what, StreamYard? That those both seem pretty easy to use.
Yeah, I do really like Riverside a lot. I like it has an app if you want to do it on the phone. But that's if people download it. I don't have I'm not out in public doing a podcast yet, but if I need to, it's nice that I can just pull out an app and have the podcast live somewhere. It records separately, so it's like on a cloud on separate tracks, so that if there was an interruption, it doesn't interrupt everything at once.
Oh, that's cool.
Pretty good.
That's cool.
Yeah. And I'm not being paid to promote Riverside.
Right.
I like the disclaimer. But I really, really, really appreciate you taking time to speak with me, and I hope this isn't the last time that we talk. I like to think that we make friends all the time. I'm going to follow you on the social pages. I'm going to look forward for Lilith.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. So until next time, everybody, go check out all of Jay Crimson's projects on Troma and wait for Lilith, and then listen to all his music and listen to his podcast and just listen to everything that he's doing because he's great.
Watch for Lilith.
Bye, everybody. Thanks again for joining me on this week's episode of The Horror Within Me. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review wherever you listen to your podcast. And for even more Horror Within Me content, visit my link tree at linktr.ee/horror within me for links to the website, my Patreon, and all of my social channels to stay up to date on all the spooky stuff that we're doing. So be safe, and until next time, stay spooky.